It was always the same sound. Heavy footsteps running up the wooden staircase from the ground floor. Fast, urgent, like someone rushing home late at night. The footsteps would reach the top of the stairs, then move across the living room on the second floor where we lived, from one end of the room to the other, and then continue toward the smaller staircase that led up to the attic. Step after step, climbing higher into the darkness above. But whenever we rushed out to look, there was nobody there. No neighbor, no thief, nothing at all. And the strangest part was, this didn't happen just once. It happened 2 or 3 times every week, for nearly 10 years. For a long time we tried to ignore it. We told ourselves the house was just old. Old wooden houses always make strange noises. But the footsteps almost always came late at night. And after a while, it became impossible not to feel uneasy. This happened when my family lived in Macau in the 1970s. Back then, Macau was still a small Portuguese colony. Life was difficult. My family had just escaped from Cambodia before the Civil War. We arrived with almost no money. My father desperately needed to find a cheap place for us to live. After weeks of searching through newspaper advertisements, he finally found an old wooden house on a narrow street called Rua do Noronha. At the time, we thought we were lucky. The rent was much cheaper than anywhere else. But later we realized there was a reason nobody wanted that house. The building was extremely old, almost entirely made of wood. The staircase from the ground floor led directly into our living room, and from the living room, another staircase went up to the attic. There was no door separating the stairs from our floor. Anyone walking upstairs would pass directly through our living room. My parents slept in the bedroom. My 2 sisters and I slept in the living room. The first night we moved in, nothing happened. Everyone slept peacefully. But on the second night, everything changed. It was around 10:30 at night. All the lights were off. The house was completely quiet. Then suddenly we heard someone running up the stairs. Heavy footsteps. Loud. Fast. The sound was so clear it felt like someone was right outside our door. My father immediately sat up. We all froze. The footsteps got closer. Closer. Then they reached the top of the stairs. My father slowly walked toward the staircase. He expected to see someone appear, but there was nobody there. And yet the footsteps continued. They crossed the living room right in front of us, then went up the attic stairs, and suddenly everything went silent. None of us slept much that night. Our bedroom was also on the second floor, just beside the living room. And no matter how warm the weather was in Macau, that room always felt strangely cold at night. The kind of cold that slowly crept into your bones, as if the air inside the room didn't belong to the living. Although it was my parents' bedroom, sometimes I would go inside during the afternoon to avoid the noise in the living room. I would lie down there for a short nap. But every time I slept in that room, I had strange dreams. In those dreams, I saw a human figure, but the figure kept changing shape. Sometimes it turned into animals, sometimes into simple shapes. A square, a circle, and then back into a human form again. The dreams always felt unsettling. After a while, I no longer dared to sleep in that room alone. The footsteps returned a few nights later. Then again, always after 10 at night, always when the lights were off, always following the same path, from the ground floor, across our living room, up to the attic. 2 or 3 times every week. My father tried to investigate many times, but every single time there was nobody there. No neighbor, no animal, no explanation. Eventually, my father stopped checking, because it made no difference. Nothing was ever there. When my sisters and I were in primary school and later in secondary school, we always tried to finish our homework as quickly as we could. Not because we were hard-working students, but because we were afraid of what might happen after 9 o'clock at night. You see, whenever we stayed up too late doing our homework, that was usually when the footsteps would return. Heavy footsteps rushing up the wooden staircase, climbing quickly toward our floor. The moment we heard that sound, our hearts would start beating faster. So every evening we rushed to finish our homework before 9 o'clock. Because once the house became quiet, the footsteps might come again. There was another problem with studying late at night. The staircase was right beside the living room where we studied. If we faced the staircase, we were terrified that something might appear there. But if we turned our backs toward the staircase, we were afraid that something might already be standing behind us, watching us quietly. During normal school days, we could avoid this by finishing our homework early. But during exam periods, we had no choice. We had to study late into the night. And during those nights, something always felt wrong. Then something even stranger began to happen. The most frightening moments involved my youngest sister. She was only 3 years old. One night, she suddenly sat straight up in bed. Her eyes were wide open. She stared toward the staircase. Then she began crying uncontrollably. My mother rushed over and tried to calm her, but my sister kept pointing toward the stairs. Finally, my mother asked what she saw. My sister answered in a trembling voice, "The lady is standing there." Everyone turned to look, but we saw nothing. At least nothing we could see. We lived in that house for 10 years. 10 years of footsteps in the night. 10 years of cold air in the bedroom. 10 years of strange fear we could never explain. Then one day we finally moved out. As we were leaving, my father mentioned the footsteps to the landlady. He joked that maybe the house had ghosts. But the landlady did not laugh. Her face suddenly became serious. She looked down and stayed silent for a long moment. Then she quietly told us the truth. The building was more than 100 years old. Many people had died there. Some from sickness, some from accidents, and some had taken their own lives. Then she told us something that froze all of us. in the bedroom where my parents had slept. A woman had hanged herself to death. Suddenly, everything made sense. The nightmares, the cold bedroom, the feeling of being watched, and the footsteps climbing the stairs every night. For 10 years, we had shared that house with someone who never truly left. Not long after we moved away, the old building was demolished. A modern concrete building stands there today. Maybe whatever was inside disappeared when the house was gone. Or maybe they simply found another place to stay. Because even now, when I hear footsteps on wooden stairs late at night, I still remember that house in Macau. And sometimes, I still wonder who was running up those stairs. If you have ever experienced something similar, strange footsteps in the night, or the feeling that someone was watching you, you are not alone. Many people have experienced things they cannot explain. If you have a real ghost story or paranormal encounter of your own, feel free to share it in the comments below. I read every story, and some of them may even appear in future videos. If you enjoy true ghost stories like this one, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel, because there are many more stories like this. Stories from places where the dead may not have fully left. And sometimes, those stories are closer to us than we think.